you want me to do intro this time?
Yeah, you can do it. You do it. You go for it.
Hello, everybody. I am Ian from Hyperspace Hobbies. This is Space Marine Steve. From Play on Tabletop and Hyperspace Hobbies.
Oh, yeah.
And today we're talking about modifiers.
Mm-hmm. And this all stems off of the one loss I took.
Yeah.
At the tournament to the guy that won.
Too many stacking modifiers.
Oh, it was so difficult. So I lost to a Dark Angels list that was the Storm Raven that has -1 damage.
Yep.
Redemptor Dreadnoughts all have -1 damage, right? He's playing it in Iron Storm, so there was a Tech Marine that could 0 out a damage, right? And then he's playing them as Dark Angels. And so he had that little speeder, that one that everyone thinks his Legends did, but it's not.
Right.
And it's got this aura that is -1 to hit and cover. So
Is a Dark Shroud
yeah, the
speeder or
Dark
something?
Shroud.
I don't
yeah.
actually know the name.
Yeah, the Dark Shroud, I think it's called. And this, these layers of defensive stats made it so difficult to actually break through the list. Like, I actually had to wait until the list kind of spread out a little bit, and so I could maybe, tag them when they weren't in the defensive auras and stuff like that, and really, getting through and fighting through all of those different layers was so obnoxiously difficult. It didn't feel like it was what Games Workshop maybe intended. Like, the Dark Shroud in the lore and stuff is meant to shroud bikes on their
Yeah,
supposed
maybe
to come in and
maybe it should have had infantry and mounted units
only.
Yeah,
not dreadnoughts,
not
and
a Storm
tanks.
Raven.
Yeah,
which is that makes no sense.
Yeah, you're like
this little thing down here.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Guarding this guy up here. Yeah.
The dreadnoughts too. You're like, the dreadnoughts and -1 to hit and cover too. And you're like, yeah. So are the 2 lancers that are behind it also. You're like, oh my good gracious.
Yeah.
Right? So the amount of firepower that was coming out of it and the amount of durability that it had made it a very difficult list to fight. And so I guess what I want to talk about today with you, Ian, is do you think that there are parts of the game that are just way too durable or way too tough?
There's things like that once you make a wall of it, yes, that in a nutshell, if it was just one speeder and one redemptor, it wouldn't be the end all. But because someone is playing multiple things that all have the same negative modifiers, -1 damage and cover all the time and -1 to hit, that's where it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
When it becomes army, I pretty much army wide have this bonus, and you just go, I don't do any damage.
Yeah. There are other examples of things like this in the game too that have been historically very frustrating, right?
Previously in editions, negative modifiers to hit would stack.
Oh,
so there would be things where you could go, your unit's -1 to be hit. This thing's -1 to be hit.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to cast another -1 to be hit ability on it. So now effectively it's -3 to be hit. And you go that's no good.
Yeah.
That's not getting you anywhere in games. And it was a problem in the game for a long time because there were some things that were really easily abusing it. I think it was Eldar Flyers.
They were, oh yeah, you hit my Eldar Jet on 7s. You're like, what?
Yeah. I mean, 6s always work, but it wouldn't matter because you'd be like, oh, I'm going to give myself +1 to hit. You're like, yeah, but you still hit on 6s.
Exactly.
Do you think that Games Workshop intended to do that? I don't really know. Maybe Games Workshop should look at Age of Sigmar as an example, because they have things where if you're playing 3 of the same unit, only one of those abilities can be active for that unit. So it'll be once per battle round, once per turn, this unit can activate its shroud. But not all those units can do it.
Yeah.
It's once per battle round, you can use this special rule that all these units share. So if you had 3 speeders that were all making shroud, it would be only one of them can actually do it. Yeah. Essentially the same way with stratagems, where only one can be used at any given time.
Yeah.
You can't use 5 grenades in a single turn, unless you have, special particular rules.
And I get why Games Workshop wants to make things in the game durable. They want your army to get 5 turns. Right?
Yes, yeah, and it's a problem when you play an army that just gets obliterated.
Yeah, you don't want to get just obliterated, and so they put in all these different layers of defense to try and make sure that units can make it the distance of a game, right? And of course, like, you know, each side attritions out models and game pieces as the game continues on, but they want to try and temper the pace of which that actually takes place.
For sure.
The thing is like, I don't know if what they meant was, because they baked in durability to the Redemptor Dreadnought, for example, right? It's -1 damage. I don't think they really truly thought, oh, you know what? Like, we're also gonna, like, it doesn't have smoke launchers as a keyword for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? And so not just because the model doesn't have it in its kit, but because
it's designed not
to do it.
Already
right?
has a 2-up. Most things are getting cover anyways.
But when you pair that with something that makes it -1 to be hit, now, like, I think you take something that was not intended to quite be that tough, and you kind of push it one step over the line. Now, it could just be the way that they've written that book, how they've looked at that codex or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But I also think there's plenty of other examples too, where, like, not just this example, but there's other examples in the game where they've, I think, misjudged how tough something should be, or needs to be. Like, I'm remembering games against, like, Necron Satan, for example.
Yeah.
And, like,
super tough.
Having damage and then having, what do they have, a 5-up or a 4-up Feel No Pain or something?
Yeah, 4-up invulnerable save, halves damage, 5-up Feel No Pain.
So, like, the math on that. Not only do they have a 4-up invulnerable save, so there's a 4-up ignore damage, effectively.
Ignoring half damage.
Right? And then they have the damage.
And then they have the damage that they take.
And then they cut it again in a third.
Yeah.
Right? And so they only take 2/3 of the damage that actually gets through after having, like...
Avatar, the Eldar Avatar as well.
Yeah, it does the same thing.
Stuff like that,
right?
too. Yeah.
Like, are things like that healthy for the game, do you think?
I think there could be a problem if it's abused. Like, I know I've talked to a lot of people. I remember even talking to JT about this, and he said, I think that Satan Shard should be more limited in how many you can actually play, which I thought was a really smart comment, because spamming the Satan Shards is the problem.
Yeah.
Playing one of them isn't so bad.
Yeah.
They only move 6 inches. They're stupidly durable. They'll nuke you in combat. The problem is when somebody brings 3 or 4 of them, and then it doesn't matter. Then all your guns are falling flat, and you're not putting enough through, and that's when it chips away.
Yeah.
At your sanity in the game.
Yeah, there's like a frustration tipping point where you just feel like nothing you do works. And when you stack all of those things, like when you play a very even kind of Space Marine list, and there's one thing that is -1 damage, right? Or even 2 things, but when 5 things have -1 damage, when all of it also has -1 to be shot at and cover,
yeah, it's a lot.
You're like, oh, like, and this is just a passive thing that they have, and they're all very high toughness, right?
Well, there's other things in the game, like the Demon Blood Throne chooses a unit within 18 inches. All Khorne units that attack that get +1 strength, +1 AP, and +1 damage.
Right. Do those stack?
They all do.
Oh.
Because it's not like an aura ability.
Right.
So you can potentially have +3 strength, +3 AP, and +3 damage if you're playing 3 Blood Thrones, which is insanity.
Should it stack?
No.
But it does.
No, it shouldn't.
Yeah, but it does.
It should be choose one of your Khorne units, that unit gets it, instead of this opponent's unit gets a debuff on them.
Yeah.
But that way you could still, supercharge your own units, and that's fine. But I mean, should that ability be able to be used 3 times in a turn by playing 3 of them? No. I think that's where that Age of Sigmar, no matter how many you're playing, only once per turn can this ability be used.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I agree with you that I think more restrictions should maybe be put on, especially some of those things that could hypothetically stack. Like, it's this, I mean, we've actually seen Games Workshop play ball in a really positive way. Like, do you remember at the beginning of 10th edition when people would play like multiple Space Marine captains in a list, or multiple of the captains from Custodes that all got the free stratagem thing?
Zeroed out,
right?
Yeah.
And before, when it said, only like if one unit in your army has this rule, it may do this, and then they couldn't all stack. I definitely remember playing a Space Marine list that was like, okay, great, I'm going to Armor of Contempt, and then these two are also going to, right? Like,
yes, and it got a little out of control.
Yeah, of course.
Or your like Firestorm detachment, and you go, this squad of Flamers gets devastating wounds. This squad of Flamers gets devastating wounds. That squad of Flamers gets devastating wounds. And all of a sudden your opponent goes, well, I just lost, 1,200 points in a single turn due to flamethrowers.
Yeah. Oh. So, I mean, Games Workshop did step in and fix the wording on that one thing. I mean, maybe they just don't see some of the stacking issues as actual major issues or anything like that. And I don't know how much of a major issue it really is, but I do think that it's a fine tune that I really wish that they would give a little bit of attention, because there are times where the durability and the stacking bonuses on things make the game at times frustrating, right? And, my opponent, when I lost, just to bring it back to that, to the tournament story, like, my opponent played incredibly well. He was a wildly good player. And like, I did not lose because of all these bonuses. I lost because of some other mistakes and stuff like that I made, and he played really well. But on the backdrop of playing good games, now there's this other thing of you also have to fight through the stacking math that I have found. Yeah. Right? So not only are we playing against one another, and there's all of the different decisions that have to be made in a game of Warhammer, and not only do you have to do that, but now you're like, now I gotta fight like some really frustrating stacking math and abilities.
Some oppressive
right?
stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Same like the Great Unclean one with the enhancement. He's got a 4-up Invuln and a 4-up Feel No Pain, and then you use Demonic Invulnerability, and if you're getting shot at, you reroll 1s to your armor save, and all of a sudden he becomes essentially unkillable in the shooting phase.
Yeah.
And those are like some stacking rules that absolutely just destroy.
It's
and
ruthless.
can just nuke your opponent's ability to do damage.
Yeah, it's rough.
There's also the negative modifier of -1 to hit if your vehicle falls below its threshold. I don't know. Each vehicle has like a different kind of
like the damaged threshold or whatever.
If it's like below half or like a little bit below like a third.
Yeah.
And it says -1 to be, your vehicle incurs a -1 to hit penalty, essentially.
Oh, yeah, the stacking there isn't great either.
Because then if you shoot something that has a -1, you don't get a -2.
Yeah.
You just get, oh, okay, well, I'm below half strength, so I,
-1's
still.
the best I got.
Yeah. Which seems really weird.
Yeah.
If it said your ballistic skill is lowered by 1, and then you shoot at something and you go, oh, I'm pop smoke and I'm -1 to hit, then its ballistic skill changes, and then that modifier makes sense.
That totally does make a lot of sense, yeah. But I mean, man, it's hard to say whether or not that was again intentional. Like, is that something that they really intended? Like, do they want vehicles going from it hits on 4s to 5s because it's damaged, and then down to 6s? Yeah. Like, maybe they don't want that. It's hard to say. However, it does feel weird when you're like, oh, I'm damaged, but I'm also shooting into combat, so oh well,
whatever.
Like right? But it's almost like there's no halfway point.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
that's
it's only
totally it.
It's only, whoa, my vehicle's useless, or oh, it doesn't matter. Like it only lives in those two camps. There's no middle ground. Maybe it's because we're playing on 6-sided dice instead of like maybe 8-sided dice or something, where you could fine tune those things a little bit differently. I don't want to play on 8-sided dice. I don't want 8s or 12s or whatever, but I'm just saying 6 sides is restrictive at times.
Yes.
Anyways. So maybe it's just the dice system the number system we have is restrictive. Yeah. It's interesting to think about. I would love to know what you think. So, one, do you think some of the units in the game are maybe too tough? Can you think of some examples? Throw them down in the comments section. Let's talk about it. Do you think there's a good way to fix this?
Yeah, I don't know. That's
Right?
what I want to hear.
Yeah,
and
let's
are
hear
there
it.
any ridiculous combos that we haven't talked about here? I
sure
want to
there
know
are.
them so I can kind of preemptively try to deal with them if they come up, or maybe play them once or twice if it's an army that I'm already playing.
And see how it goes. Thank you so much for joining us today on the deck of Hyperspace Hobbies. I am Space Marine Steve, joined by, of course,
Ian.
and we are wishing you a great night.